Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, well, it's time. We can start now. So, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Amen. All right, well, it's great to see you all again. And so we'll continue with where we left off on chapter 5 before we move on to chapter 6. And so if I remember correctly, we were in this book on page 105. That's paragraph 66, where he's talking about how he makes this very bold statement. He says, "Have you ever seen someone fall to a simple sin? Know that he trusted his own thought." And then he adds, Dorotheus adds, "There's nothing more serious or ruinous than trusting in yourself, in your own judgment." And so this is something. This is coming out of centuries of monastic experience, where it's always when a person refuses to listen to their elder or their spiritual father, that they become an easy target for the demons. It becomes easy for the demons to dupe them. And there's some extreme examples. By the way, you can all hear me okay, right? Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, so there's some extreme examples that we see in Holy Fathers, where, like in the life of Saint Joseph the Hesychast, he once had a disciple who had an angel appear to him and the angel would wake him up for his prayer, would say to this monk, "Father, it's time to wake up and do your prayers." And so this monk was surprised that an angel would do this, of course, but he got up and started praying, and he would do this and this monk would do this. This supposed angel would do it, every night. But the thing is, the angel said to him, "But I'm going to help you pray, but whatever you do, don't tell your elder, because otherwise I'll disappear." And so the monk was thinking, "Well, I don't lose this angel. I mean, angel, that's greater than just some elder. So I'll just listen." And so in the beginning, of course, this angel did in fact help this person get up for prayer. But that's the whole trick. I mean, because the way the demons work is that they don't go directly against us. They first, try to present something that seems okay, and then once they have our trust, well, then they can steer things other way in a direction. And so, but then the way this story ended, it actually ended up okay, barely though, because what ended up happening was that at one point this monk, who really wasn't all that good of a monk, one day he came to to Saint Joseph, with tears in his eyes. He said, "Oh, thank you, Yaranda, for all the time you've guided me and helped me. I just want to give you wholehearted thanks." You're just all emotional and all really deeply touched. And so Saint Joseph was like, "Wait, where's this all coming from? How come you're so grateful all of a sudden?" And then the monk says, "Oh, well, I just want to say my final goodbyes, because just in case I don't see you again." And the Saint was like, "What do you mean you're not going to see me again? Where are you going?" And you're like, "Oh, well, you never know what might happen." But the Saint Joseph sort of pressured him, and finally the monk admitted, "Well, my angel told me that he's going to take me to heaven tonight." and then the Saint Joseph said, "Your angel? Well, why didn't you tell me about this sooner?" "Oh, well, the angel told me not to tell you." And so then Saint Joseph, being the sort of the rough kind of person that he is, he just smacked him upside the head and said, "You are so deluded. What do you mean, your angel? Don't you see this? This is not an angel. This is a demon. He's gonna take you, lead you off, take you up, lift you up in the air, and then throw you down a cliff or something." And so he said, "You don't have a blessing to leave my cell until tomorrow. And then we'll see about this angel if he's going to come and take you to heaven." And so, of course, the angel didn't show up because St. Joseph was right there the whole time. But I mean, yeah, so that was a close call, because there have been other, close calls that did go over the edge. I mean, there are times when people would be like deluded into. I mean, there's one story of a monk who, on Mount Athos, he was trusting his own thoughts, and he was maybe in the late 60s or 70s, getting older, but he had a really huge, beautiful beard. And so what he would do is every morning he would just get out a comb and just comb it, and just be like, "Wow, this is a good beard." and he started thinking, but then not only did he start thinking that, but he also started thinking, yeah, with a beard like this, I could be a really good patriarch. And he started believing this thought that I'll be patriarch one day. Just wait and see. Yeah. And so when the demons saw that he was so sort of full of himself and egotistical, one day one night when he's doing his prayer rule, an angel appeared to him with all kinds of glory and said, the God has heard your prayers, and you are worthy to become the next patriarch of Constantinople. So come with me, and I'll take you. And we have a whole retinue of people from. The angel appeared as like a deacon or something, and he says, I've been sent here by the patriarch, and we have the whole retinue of priests and all in line here. We're gonna come in. We have this carriage waiting for you. We'll take you away to Constantinople. We'll make you a patriarch. He was like, oh, okay, great, wow. He was all happy to do this. So he all good. He stepped out of his cell. There's truly he saw all these priests all lined up waiting to take him up there. And there's a glorious carriage, but because, thank God, I mean, God had mercy on him because he was a pious person. He was a sincere monk, even though he was a little bit, vainglorious. But so God saved him at the last minute, because just as he was about to step into the carriage, he had the good habit of making the sign of the cross. And so as soon as he made the sign of the cross, all this demonic vision disappeared. All those priests, so-called priests, and all the carriage all disappeared, and he found himself at the edge of a cliff. So if he had stepped into the carriage, he would have just basically like committed suicide in a sense. And this of course, I mean, obviously he didn't have some person he was confessing to, because otherwise his elder would have been able to tell him, hey, this looks dangerous. This looks like demonic stuff. I mean, anyway, so this is just emphasizing underlying the need for confession, even of thoughts, like, because this person, this monk, for example, was thinking of how he could be the next patriarch. He wasn't exactly sinning in the sense he wasn't doing some sin, he was actually doing something sinful. He wasn't actually stealing or lying or something, but it was just in his thoughts. And that's why also Christ himself emphasizes in the Bible and in the New Testament, when he says that it's really in our thoughts that we need to be watchful, because, for example, he says, anyone who looks at a woman with desire has already committed adultery in his heart. And so that's just in the thoughts. He said you have to be watchful with your thoughts. And the same thing, if you even get angry with your brother, that's the same thing as murdering him. So because the anger is just in the thoughts, but it's just the first stage of something it's just the fruition of that initial giving into it. Okay, so let's move on and let's see now, and so that page 107 and paragraph 67.
Papa, I have a question, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure, yes, please.
When do the logismoi become thoughts? Like you say, we have to confess thoughts. So if there are not really thoughts, but something that you see coming, you know what I mean, but you don't, it's not, maybe, I don't know how to discern. I feel it's not coming from me. So, and I don't accept this. So could you please clarify when it becomes my thoughts?
Yeah. And so this is a tricky thing, because the word in Greek for thought is logismos, and the plural is logismi. And when the Holy Fathers talk about logismi, these thoughts, they're talking, what they're referring to is not just a simple plain thought of, oh, I got to remember to wash the dishes or something like that, but it's something more, sort of like an intrusive thought, a thought that has some sort of passion attached to it. And so we don't obviously we don't need to confess every single thing that passed through our head, because that just take forever. But we do need, and we don't even need to confess every passing thought. So for example, if let's say it's a fasting day and I see some piece of cheese and I have the thought, oh, that'd be really tasty, but I don't dwell on it. I just say, oh yeah, but it's Friday, tomorrow I'll have some. So that's a thought. That's what the Holy Fathers would call an assault, where there's the temptation. Hey, this is actually pretty tasty. You could have this. But if you immediately just reject, say, oh no, I can't do that. That's I don't want to do that. Then there's no sin. In fact, there's not only there's no sin, there's even you get grace for that, for resisting an attack, a temptation like that. And so those kinds of thoughts don't need confession, but the kinds of thoughts that do need confession is when we give into it. So when we give into when we think, let's say we're thinking, yeah, so Friday is my birthday and I have some people over. Yeah, should I make some pizza or not with cheese? Well, yeah, I'll make an exception for myself. Yeah, I'll do it. Well, then there's a thought where you're giving into the passion, and then it's so any kind of sin any kind of thought that has some sort of passionate uh, hue to it, these are the things that need to be confessed. Does that?
So
Yeah.
yeah, so passion attached to it, that means, as you say, if I kind of am attached with my heart with it a little bit, so I want a little bit to do this, as
Yes.
opposed to the thought comes to me, but I reject it right away. And I'm saying, like, no, 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 that's not my thought. Go away, please.
Yeah.
So that's not
So
mine.
it so yeah, so it has to be something that's passionate, meaning something that's not godly, because having a desire for it is not necessarily a bad thing, because you could have the thought, oh, there's going to be a vigil at that church on Saturday. Let's go to that. Yeah, yeah, and you really want to do it. So that you have a strong desire to do it, but obviously that's not a bad thing. So it's not the fact that you have a strong desire for it, but it's the fact that there's something not okay with it, something passionate or sinful or something. Does that?
I'm sorry to kind of extrapolate on that. Let me make an example. Like say I see a good looking man, see, and I'm not thinking anything, but
Yeah,
there's a thought coming to me, oh, that's a good looking man,
yeah,
and I reject it right away, not being attached to it.
yeah,
uh, so what is it?
yeah. So,
Is it something that I should confess or
oh
not?
no, no, you don't need to confess that kind of thing, because this is a situation where that temptation came, you fought it off, and you there's no sin involved at all. But you would need to confess it if you start dwelling on this thought and staring at them and giving into this thought. So that's where it does need confession. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on that, or should we move on to? Okay. So page 107, as I was saying. So here's where he has this.
Can you please tell us what chapter are we? What chapter
Oh,
are
oh,
we?
I'm sorry. We're on chapter 5,
Ah,
and we're about halfway or towards the end of chapter 5. Yeah.
thank
And
you.
there's paragraph 67 if you have one that's numbered. Yeah. Okay. So then in this paragraph here, 67, he talks about, well, first on the previous page, he has a beautiful comment. He says that on 106, he says that he was worried that we have to, it says in the Bible, we must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of heaven. And he saw that he was experiencing no hardships. And so he went to his Elder Barsanuphios, and said, "Hey, what's going on? I don't have any hardships. I mean, I'm at peace. What am I off the path?" And so the elder said, "Well, the reason why you don't have any hardship, you don't have any stress and anxieties, is because you're just being obedient to your abbot. And when you're when you're under obedience like this, you're safe. You don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about these major decisions in your life, because you just ask your abbot, hey, should I do this or this? And he tells you, and then you're good to go. And you know that because you're doing it with obedience, that God is blessing it, and so you can be at peace. And so he had so much peace that he wasn't even worrying about things. And so this is something also that really helps us in our prayer as well, because this is something that also Saint Sophronius and Elder Zacharias and Essex really emphasize, how, and which is coming really from Saint Silouan, because Saint Silouan, the Athonite, he says that a person who puts his trust in obedience and in God through obedience, this person can pray with an unhindered mind, because he doesn't have to worry about this and this. Because as we know, all the things that the primary obstacle in prayer is having some sort of worry, something that's nagging at our mind, and we can't stop thinking about it. Whereas if when we're under obedience, we can just simply be obedient to whatever our spiritual father says, and then we don't have to worry like that. So that's another advantage of being obedient, that we get this peace. And so, but then in the next section, the next paragraph on 107, paragraph 67, this is where he talks about an interesting incident where he had this really intense sorrow, this depression, where everything was bleak and dark, and then this angel appeared to him looking like a bishop, and blessed him and said, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he was attentive unto me and heard my supplication. And he goes on with this psalm verse, and this kind of thing is something. This is sort of an extreme example of what happens, perhaps in all of our lives. That we have, of course, our ups and downs, and we have our sorrowful times and our joyful times, and sometimes these sorrowful times can be extremely intense. But we see also in the lives of the saints where it's just before some intense experience of grace that they would have these kinds of low times. And like, for example, another example is with Saint Joseph the Hesychast. When he was still a layperson, he was on Mount Athos. He was going all over Mount Athos to try to find some elder, some person who had a deep spirituality. And in those days, in the 1920s, it was sort of a low point in the history of Mount Athos, in the sense that the monks at those times were becoming very worldly for the most part, and most of them were just focused on just work and making money and surviving, and they weren't really talking very much about Noetic prayer and achieving union with God and these loftier things. And he was just getting so St. Joseph was getting so depressed that he couldn't find any spiritual person to talk about something a little deeper. And then one day he had a really bad incident with one elder who exploded with anger for no reason at him. And so St. Joseph went up almost to the top of Mount Athos and was just praying there. And it says, he said in one of his letters, he just was there for weeping for more than 10 hours, just weeping and weeping. And it wasn't because he was insulted by this person, but it was just because he was just so disappointed. He says, well, if I can't find spirituality here on the Holy Mountain, where am I going to find it? Mm-hmm. And so as he was praying and praying and weeping for hours, at one point, all of a sudden, a beam of light came from the Church of the Panagia, and it went into his heart, and he experienced Noetic prayer for the first time, this unceasing Noetic prayer. So these kinds of things are very encouraging for us to know that God can allow these very, very dark times just to give us a test of our patience. It's like, and even Saint Anthony the Great had this. He was at a time when he was totally overwhelmed and totally beat up by the demons, and then finally Christ appeared to him, and then Saint Anthony said, "Where were you?" Because it was like he was left alone, and Christ said, I was there with you, but I wanted to test your patience and see and give you more experience, and so after that, God gave him much more grace. So that's also how I think it is in our lives as well, that we do have really difficult times, but God is still with us if we can just keep crying out to him and holding on. And so that's why Christ said, in your patience you will gain your souls. So that this is very, so that's the key there. Okay, so, and then now in 68, page 109, the next section, he says, he asked this question: what if someone does not have a suitable person to ask for guidance? Then what should he do? And he answers, he says, well, if you sincerely with all your heart wish to know the will of God, God won't abandon you, and you can even get the will of God from a little child. And so what this means is that if in the event we really can't get an answer from our spiritual father, if there's some reason we can't, then what we need to do is really ask God with great intensity, please show me your will, and then God can enlighten even just some child or some random incident to come and to show you his will. So this doesn't mean that you can just avoid going to your spiritual father and just find any old person, because that's totally against what he was saying earlier in the chapter, how it's crucial not to get guidance from just anybody. But yeah. Okay, so that's it for I had to say for chapter 5. Do you want to have any comments on that? Should I move on to chapter 6 now? Yeah. Okay, so in chapter 6 on not judging one's neighbor. Yeah, and this is as you're saying, you're really our conscience really reproves us for this one, because it's so easy to judge people, and I think it's easy, especially easy for us specifically, like the people right here in this group, to judge people, because people like us who are doing extra things to learn more about our spiritual life, we do have a clearer sense of what sin is and what sin isn't, and so it's very easy for us, to see that if someone is doing something that's slightly egotistical or slightly whatever, we're more educated in the spiritual life, so we can see these things more clearly, and so it's so easy for us to judge people. So the key, though, is of course to be able to see the sins and not judge them. And so I'll just jump ahead a little bit and then go backwards, because this is very crucial. So on page 120 is like 2/3 of the way through the chapter, in paragraph 76. Abba Dorotheus says at the top of 120, he says, are the saints perhaps blind and do not see sins? In other words, they're not judging because they don't see sins. He says, no, not at all, because who hates sins more than the saints? But rather, the saints do not despise one who sins, nor do they judge him or loathe him, but suffer with him. And so this is a very, very important point, because a lot of times when we're trying to resist sin, with the sin of judging, we try to tell ourselves that, oh no, I didn't really see that happen, or I didn't, you try to pretend to yourself that someone isn't sinning when it's pretty blatantly obvious that they are, and that can work. If you're good at convincing yourself of things, and actually it actually works pretty well, and specifically when there's plenty of room for benefit of the doubt, because we see someone, let's say, whatever it is, doing something that looks passionate, but you don't really know what they meant when they said it or did it. Well, then those are the times when you can simply say, well, I don't know what he was really thinking, or what he was really thinking, why he meant that. I don't know if he was bragging when he said that, or if he was just saying it just as simply as a fact. But and so in those kind of situations, you can give people the benefit of the doubt, and that way you escape the whole business of judging someone. But then if in other situations, it can be much more difficult to pretend that you didn't see something. And the example I give to people and is this idea of what would happen if there is a saint in a bank and someone rushes in with a gun and takes money. Did I tell you this already? I some of you have told. Anyway, well, I'll tell it again. So what happened is, so imagine the saints there waiting in line, and someone runs in with a gun and grabs a bag of money and runs out. And so what most people would be saying, and if they see it, they say, oh, that robber, they got to catch him and punish him. What a bad guy. He's, people like that ruin our society. And, they'd be all upset with this guy and calling him all kinds of names. Whereas the saint, he would have a completely different reaction to witnessing this bank robbery, because has so much love and feels sorry for all people who are going away from God. What he would do would be thinking, oh no, this person, he just robbed the bank. He just committed a serious sin. I'm really worried for his salvation because, and this poor fellow, maybe he never had a good upbringing. Maybe he doesn't even believe in God, and the saint might even start tearing up, thinking of how dangerous this path is that this robber is going on. So in all this way of thinking of the saint, he's not judging because he's viewing the robber with so much love, and the saint doesn't need to lie to himself and say, oh no, this guy, he was just making withdrawal, he's in a rush. He doesn't have to say that kind of thing. He can just admit, call a spade, say, that yeah, he did rob the bank, but that's not going to prevent me from seeing him the way God sees him. In other words, with a tremendous amount of love. And it's really that love that enables us to see sins without judging them. And perhaps you've all had the same experience. If you have there's someone in your life whom you love very, very much, and then they do something that's clearly a sin or clearly bad, the what you'll be saying is, oh, but they're trying, and they're doing their best, and they've got a good heart, they just are misguided right now, and you find some way to justify them, and that way you're not really judging them. And so what that really tells us about judging is that
Father,
yes,
Vlegite, can I ask you a question about judging? So
yes.
okay, let's say that, we do it with love. Is it a little bit dangerous at the same time to feel our ego and see it like, okay, I'm loving these people. I have compassion for a person. So does it feed a little bit our ego too at the same time? Is it a little bit dangerous?
Well, it depends, because and this ties in with something else that Abba Dorotheus says, where he says, I'm just jumping around to page 118 in this paragraph 75, and so he said at the top of 118, it says, if he talks about someone who's striving for their salvation, these people would say that they would see their brother sinning, and sighing deeply, they would say, woe is me, he fell today, without doubt I will fall tomorrow. And so this is, if you have this kind of approach where you see that, we're all in the same boat, and sure, this person might have fallen right now, but I'm no better, because I also have passions. I might not have the same passion as this person does, but I know that I'm falling into sins constantly, and so, especially if I'm going to be judging this person, it's very likely that by judging this person, I'll lose some grace, and then I'll be very vulnerable to demonic attacks, and then I will actually sin tomorrow or even today. And so if we, as long as we can view the other person as a sinner while we also view ourselves as in the same boat, well, then we're safe. But it's true though, if I view the other person as a sinner, and I'm sitting up on a lofty throne of holiness, that's not going to work. Yeah. And so,
thank you, Father.
Sam, sorry,
yes,
I have one more question. Okay,
sure.
so I guess it's in addition to what the fellow brother in Christ was just talking about. So when you, like, as Christians, we call to help other people to tell them the right thing to do and to help them not to go to hell. So if you see someone who's fallen into a big sin, and just say someone's cheating on someone and they're married, okay? Just this came into my head right now, and you're telling them what they're doing is wrong, and in that moment, is there a fine line that we're judging them?
Well,
does that make sense? Like, I'm telling you, hey, don't do that. That's wrong. Is there judgment in that?
Well, you have to really.
That's where I get confused.
Yeah, it is tricky. You have to really examine your heart and see, am I able to view this person with compassion? Can I really put myself in his shoes, and can I really say to myself, I know what it's like to give in to a passion. I know what it's like to disregard my conscience. I'm in the same boat with this person. I might not be cheating on my spouse, but I've ignore my conscience in other ways. So I totally equate myself with this person, even if he's like a horrible, murderer or whatever, I can see that I still have the same seeds of passion in myself. And so I genuinely believe that I'm no better than this person. And one thing that's very helpful that can make you believe that you're no better than this person is this idea of realizing that, you know, people have received different amount of gifts. We have, for example, most of us have had very good upbringings, and or all of us are in the Orthodox Church. All of us take our because of our past experiences in life that God has arranged for us, whether it's from our parents, our teachers, or whatever. Our character is such that we care for our salvation, and so whereas other people don't have that necessarily. And so the question we can ask ourselves is, suppose I didn't have the kind of upbringing that I have, but I had this other person's upbringing, would I also be like a murderer or whatever? And the answer is, well, definitely yes, because I can see in myself I have the passion of anger, and my anger is sort of within limits because I'm sort of had this sort of upbringing, but so bearing in mind our common humanity prevents us from judging people when we see their sins. Okay.
I have a question. How do you avoid the risk of judging someone if you're talking with, let's say, a friend who is complaining or expressing to you somebody who has sinned against them, and especially if you know this other person who sinned against them, so you want to sympathize, and you're also maybe even a little bit scandalized, and you want to sympathize, but you don't want to outright judge this other person, but at the same time you want to show sympathy to your friend. But I feel like there's a risk of judging there.
Yeah, and there is risk. And again, the way out of it is to make sure that your heart is loving both towards this person who has been unjustly treated, who has been treated poorly, and towards the person who did the mean behavior. So the way it could look is, while this person is saying, "Oh, my friend did this, and this to me," you can genuinely empathize with them and say and show that you understand how they feel and why they feel that way, so that you can say, for example, "Oh yeah, I can see you must feel really frustrated and disappointed for this person to do this, because you need more understanding and fairness and respect," and then they say, yeah, and then they understand that you get how they feel and where they're coming from. And then once this person sees that you really get where they're coming from, then you can also say something about this other person. You can show them, you can talk about this other person, as we were saying last time, as if this person were present, as if this person were eavesdropping, and you can say, yeah, and this other person, for this other person to do this to you, wow, this person must be going through some really hard times, and who knows what bad day this person had to make them do that, or maybe bad month or bad life even. And so if you can maintain that love for even the perpetrator of the bad behavior, well, then it'll be natural that you're not judging, and at the same time being empathetic to the person who's been treated poorly. Does that sound good? Yeah.
Yes.
Father, can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
Is judgment a toxicity that comes from our heart? Do we have to clean our heart? Is it combined, or is it binded with our heart? Is it a passion that comes from our heart?
Yeah, the desire to judge, you were saying.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's true. I mean, that the more passions we have, the more likely it is we'll fall into judgment, because one of the reasons why we get some pleasure out of talking about other people's faults is because we have this sense that if I'm better than this person, well, if this person's bad, if I can show how bad this other person is, well, then that sort of makes me look better because I'm not so bad, kind of thing. And so it's true that usually we judge people because we have a dislike for that person, or because we have this egotistical sense that I need to be better than other people. And so yeah, so I agree that it is passion. Yeah, say it again. Oh, okay. Yeah, and this ties in also with the whole sense of how it really is that love is how we avoid judging, because as I was saying, when we really love someone, we never judge them. And so what that tells us is that the real solution to not judging is making sure that we cultivate love for a person. And in fact, what we can do is we can view judgmental thoughts as sort of a warning light, a warning signal that we don't have enough love for that person, because if we did, we wouldn't be judging. And so if that's how it is, then we can think of, just like you have like a red light on the dashboard of your car goes on when you don't have enough gas. In the same way, judgmental thoughts are the red light that appear in our thoughts when we don't have enough love in our tank for that person. And so then the solution becomes very clear. That the solution is, okay, we'll just put more love in their tank for that person. Just find a way to love that person, and find a way to feel sympathy and feel sorry for the person. And then the judging will disappear. And I would even say that it's because that judging is the opposite of love, that this is the reason why judging is such a serious sin in God's eyes, because we know that God is love, and if judging is the opposite, well, then this is going directly against God. Okay.
Father,
Stop by, friend. Sorry, one more question.
Yes,
Sorry,
yes,
but can we judge words and actions? Because I often read that, and I hear in homilies, we can judge words and actions, but not put labels on people. So practical in our daily life, what does that look like if I'm judging words and actions? Like, if I see someone like swear all the time, that's an action. So then do I go say to that person, like, and I'm judging what they're doing, and I can go and say, you know what, don't do that, it's not right. Is that, I'm not judging the person, I'm not labeling saying, oh, he's a whatever, but I'm saying that action is wrong. Is that what that means? Because the Lord said judge righteously. What does that all look like? Practical in our daily lives.
Yeah. So this is the idea that it is important for us to know that, for example, saying swear words all day long is or even a little bit is a sin. It's something that's not godly. And then if we see that someone is swearing, it is important for us to be aware that that behavior, this is not okay in God's eyes. So, but then now it's the next step of whether or not we want to. But the problem with acknowledging that swearing is not good in God's eyes is that what comes next is what really counts. If we're not careful, what we'll be thinking inwardly is that, oh, and this person is swearing, or so this person is not okay in God's eyes, and he's a bad person, and all that. So that's the direction we have to watch out for. Whereas we can do this, we can go a different direction, as we're saying. We can say, this person is swearing, and oh, I feel sorry for him because he's going away from God, and I care for his well-being, and I want him to be a good person. I want him to be saved. I want him to be, be a beautiful person in soul. And so, but then so that's all the internal stuff. And then whether or not we actually approach a person and say, hey, don't swear, or swearing is whatever, that depends very, very much on who the person is, and if they're likely to accept correction from us, and also if we have to also be very vigilant about our own inner state, because if I'm all riled up and disturbed because of what someone has done, that's a warning sign that I'm not ready to discuss this with the other person, because even if I say all the words just perfectly, the other person will pick up on my inner disturbance, and then that will make him more disturbed, and then it'll be a fight. So yeah, so that takes some caution. Someone else was going to say something?
Father, can I say something? So this, um, I understand that the issue of judgment is very important, especially here in America. And I say that because I've lived in Greece and I've lived here, and I see how different it is. Um, I do see that sometimes in the American society there is trouble distinguishing between judging a person and judging an action. And if you judge an action, they automatically think you're judging the person. And so people don't like to be judged personally, but they also do not like their actions to be judged. And I think the bottom line is going to be that people should judge only if they are in the position of being a judge. If we are not in the position of being a judge, we will not be accepted as a judge, and our judgment of the action, even with love and even with care, will not be accepted because some people are just not ready to, and we need to establish a good rapport and a good um, relationship with another person before they are ready to accept judgment of their action. Otherwise, they will consider this. They will consider our judgment as malicious, as having no love in it. So now it's different if you're a spiritual father. You have to sometimes say it outright that what you're doing is not right. You have to say it. But for us in our everyday society, we are not in a position to judge our fellow, our comrade, our
Yeah.
colleague. This is not our job to do that unless we have established a rapport and the other person knows that we love them. Even I see that even nowadays our children do not accept um, comments
Yeah.
which are come from love and to help them become better people. I hear kids, my children saying, "You're judging me," and it's very difficult. It's very difficult trying to help someone before establishing this good relationship, and not all times are right to tell somebody what you're doing is not right. It's not, and the father, Saint Dorotheus, says it very nicely in the example of the fish and the hook, where he says that the fathers are very careful how they're gonna bring the fish into their how they're gonna catch the fish. They let go and then they pull and then they let go and then of the fishing rod and pull till they catch the fish for Christ.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I do agree that there is. It's one thing. I mean, inwardly, we do need to discern between what's good and what's bad, because that's important. To have that very clear of this kind of thing is sinful and this kind of thing is virtuous. That kind. So that's for our thoughts. But then whether or not we choose to express this to another person, as you're saying, it takes extreme caution, because, and I agree that here in America, because we're not in Greece where 90 whatever percent of the people are Orthodox, where but here where it's the majority, 90% are not Orthodox, and so they're going to have a completely different value system and worldview, and so and as you say, in their experience, any kind of criticism is associated also with a criticism against them personally. So, but one thing that I would say that enables us to make a comment that's much more likely, not guaranteed, but much more likely to be accepted as an expression of love, is if we can say things in a way that's that's reflecting, that's directly a direct expression of our love and care for the person. So, for example, if I see someone, let's say I see someone stealing, shoplifting, for example, it's one thing for me to say to the person, shoplifting is bad, it's illegal, it's a sin, or whatever. If you say it like that, it's obviously it's most likely to be taken as a judgmental statement. Whereas if you say how you personally feel about this when you observe this, and why you feel this way, it's much more likely to be accepted as something coming from care, assuming you are speaking with care. So, for example, you say, when I noticed that you shoplifted the other day, I felt very sad because I care for you as a person. I want you to be an upright, noble person. And in my understanding of how of virtue and morals, it's some shoplifting is something that detracts from the beauty of you as a person. And so I want you to know that this makes me sad. I'm not, because I can't, so then the person can see that you're not saying that it's wrong. You're not saying that it's bad. You're just saying that you're feeling sad and worried for them because you care for them. So that kind of approach is much more effective. But even then, the person can still take it as a criticism and get defensive and stuff. So yeah, it takes a lot of caution.
Isn't that why it's good to look at the church as like the hospital, that we're all sick? Because I always try to think of it as, you would never look at a sick patient when you're in the hospital and go, oh, he's sicker than me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
You would feel really sorry that they're ill, right? Yeah. So I like to see that and go, well, obviously I'm really sick, so I can't, I'm going to focus on my own illness, right? As opposed to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Father, μπορώ να πω κάτι σε αυτό? Can I say something?
English?
In Greek, I have a phrase that when I use, it works like magic, especially with my kids. If I want to judge an action they do, and I say all these comments, usually does not work, because obviously my kids have their own ego. But if I say, I will say it in Greek, I cannot find the English translation, and I need your help with that also.
Okay. Yeah.
Σε αδικεί αυτό που κάνεις. Σε αδικεί. Πώς το λέμε στα αγγλικά? It's not fair for you.
It's well, literally, it is not fair to you, but that doesn't convey that. The sense is more like, I mean, the way I would say that in English would be, doing that is beneath you.
Oh, okay.
In fact, that's one. In fact, one of the most powerful corrections I've ever had in my life was by a very good friend of mine who said to me, "You're better than that."
You're better than that.
And that's something that when I heard that, I was like, wow, because it shows that this person cares for my well-being. It's also calling me out. There's that's not you should be above. You can be so much better than that.
Yeah. Okay, Father. Yeah, this works. For example, if I go to the room and I see it's messy and all over the place, all the stuff, and I say, what mess is this? What mess is this? This is not good. It's not good for you to have this mess and blah, blah, blah. It does work. They become upset. They feel that I don't understand. They are tired and they go to the sports after school and they don't have time to go to pick up their stuff. But if I go and I say, oh, I think σε αδικεί αυτό το δωμάτιο. Σε αδικεί. Άμα το μαζέψεις, είναι σε αδικεί έτσι που το έχεις.
Does not reflect your image.
Yeah, Mom, I will pick up.
Oh, yeah, it makes you look bad. It makes you look bad.
So I share this phrase with our spiritual siblings here to help. Thank you.
Yeah, that is beautiful to hear. Yeah. Okay.
Father, I'm sorry, quick.
Yes.
One of the there's a psychological diagnosis which is called projection, and I was in a situation where professionally there was someone who might have at times rushed to a conclusion about an action of mine that was completely out of out of my sphere. So I'll just give you an example because I don't want to get into the details. Let's say he would accuse me of, let's say, lying about something or stealing about something, and it would be completely beyond my thoughts or my intentions, and it'd be out of this world in that moment. And I read somewhere that sometimes people project their own self onto others' actions in moments. So when we're judging someone, sometimes we have to be aware that we are possibly, because we're seeing something out of context, right? We're seeing him in this or her in this moment, and we might be projecting our own behavior onto them. And that might be why Christ doesn't want us to judge, because in essence, we might be seeing ourselves when in fact this person's not us, and we don't understand the context of their life. What would we think if we saw St. Ignatius actually banging on the table, if we were looking at him from afar, knowing everything that he went through? We would think, well, a priest shouldn't be doing that. But if now that we know what he's gone through, maybe we'd be a little more understanding. What a thought about.
Yeah, definitely, and that's very true, because I mean, you know, we all tend to think that our vision is perfectly clear. We have no that everything we see is accurate, and but we lose track of at what point is our vision clouded by some slight or blatant interpretation, and or as you say, like a projection where I know that if I were to say something like that, that would be just extreme egotism and vainglory and bragging. And so therefore this person must be an extreme egotist and braggart and all that. Whereas this other person might be coming from a completely different, you know, mindset, but we're not able to see that because we're just so stuck in our own way of thinking and talking and everything. So yeah, that's a very important thing to do. And so this ties in with this idea of how we can train ourselves to give people the benefit of the doubt, and by recognizing the fact that I have my the actual thing I'm observing is compounded with an interpretation, and in that interpretation there's all kinds of room for benefit of the doubt. Yeah, okay, great. So if you move on to page 115, and this paragraph 73, there's the story that with the two slave girls, the two orphans that were adopted. One was adopted by a prostitute, and the other was adopted by a nun. And then he says, and then suppose each of these girls, when they grew up, they both fell into the same sin. And then the question is, you know, would God judge them in the same way? And of course, the answer is, of course not. That there's no way that God would judge them in the same way, because in fact, Christ even said, "From him to whom much is given, much will be demanded." And so that means that if this girl that was raised by a nun ended up falling into a sin, it's much more serious than the girl who was raised by a prostitute. And so this is also further sort of ammunition or tools up our sleeve, how we can bear this in mind and realize that, well, wait a second, you know, just because this person is doing some sin, this might be judged extremely leniently by God, and or maybe God will even just overlook it the way he would just overlook some slight thing I would do. Whereas for someone else to do it, the exact same sin, it could be something very serious. And so that'll enable us to see that, well, we don't know how God is going to judge this person.
Papa Ephraim,
Yeah.
it's not that the one girl or the other is gonna be sinless. It's all about how they're gonna see, how they're gonna be able to perceive sin and act on it. That's the purpose of this saying from Abba Dorothea, right? Like they grew up in a different way. That doesn't mean they're gonna be both sinless or sinful. It's just gonna be that how they will act upon
So,
something.
so the way I understood this story was that he's trying to point out that we we can't be we can't so like we're not omniscient, we're not all knowing, we're not in a position to fully know a person's background and all their inner motives and what kinds of things, in what way they're resisting and what way they're not resisting. All these kinds of things are unknown to us about people. And so it really is impossible for any human being to judge another human being. And it's just like in this example on page 114 in paragraph 71, where there's an elder that judged someone, and then when this person died, an angel took his soul to the elder who judged him and said, okay, so since you want to judge him, where does he go, to heaven or hell? And of course this elder's like, oh no, what do I do? How can I possibly even say that? And and that's the sort of same kind of thing here, where how can, when there's so much backstory of every person, not just these two slave girls we're talking about, but really every person has a whole backstory, a whole history of ups and downs, of good and bad influences. So we really it makes it's nonsensical for us to try to assess whether or not this person should be judged for this or not, and how serious it is and all that.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, and then in this edition of the book, there's a footnote on page 116 where he's talking about simplicity, and where a person, and they explain that simplicity is a virtue, actually. Simplicity in the sense that when we're very straightforward and not judging and interpreting but just saying things as they are, this is a virtue. And there's a cute story from the life of Saint Paisios of the Holy Mountain, that where it shows what kind of simplicity, what simplicity looks like, and how he was delighted in this. So one day there was some little boy, like a 10-year-old boy, that just came by himself to the cabin of Saint Paisios, and but this boy wanted to speak with this holy elder, Elder Paisios, Saint Paisios, but he didn't know what he looked like. So when he came to the cabin, the boy said, "Excuse me, is Elder Paisios here?" And then the Saint Paisios, Elder Paisios says, pretended he wasn't the Elder Paisios, says, "Oh, what do you want him for?" And he said, "Oh no, the boy said, oh, I want to talk with him." And then Saint Paisios said to him, "Oh, he went to the town to buy some cigarettes." and just to see what the kid would say, I guess. And then the kid said, "Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I'll just wait here until he comes back." And he wasn't all perturbed. He didn't even start thinking, "Wait, well, why is he buying cigarettes?" And Saint Paisios was just absolutely delighted with this, and he just saw this as a prime example of how you can be simple and just take things at face value and not read into it and say, "Oh, but that's a sin," So, of course, the other thing, of course, is that being simple this way sort of borderlines to stupidity, because you can also be sort of, yeah. So, but that's sort of really he's talking about, this simplicity.
But also the innocence of the child.
Yeah, and
right?
the innocence, and that's sort of the straightforward innocence.
Like cigarettes. But the kid was like so innocent.
Yeah.
Well, also was the phrase ignorance is bliss.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can. Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, there's just two, three more things I wanted to say about this chapter, but I'll have to say them next time, because actually our time is up already. So unless anyone just had one last quick question, I'll just stop here.
I have one last quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, going off of what you kind of just said, it kind of reminded me of like the phrase "ignorance is bliss."
Yeah.
And I also want to know kind of if that's not very orthodox kind of idea, because if you just like stay in ignorance so that I don't have to learn, so that not much more is expected of me, like where's the
Yeah,
where's
that,
the mind in that? Why do I want to keep learning? Maybe I should just stay in my ignorance.
yeah. There's one monk at St. Anthony's where I was explaining to some things about the spiritual life, and right in the middle he said, "Wait, stop! Don't say any more. I don't want to be responsible for knowing this." So yeah, it's true that.
That's true.
But of course, God doesn't want us to be idiots. I mean, Elder Ephraim even said, he quoted Saint Isaac and said, God doesn't want to put oxen in His kingdom. He does want us to become, smart and wise. And so, but it's true though that and to a certain degree, ignorance is bliss, because when you're unaware of other people's sins and you're unaware of this and that, it's very natural for you to be much more, humble-minded and focused on your own spiritual struggle and not judging people. So
And accepting of that person.
Yeah.
Because you don't know,
Yeah.
that this person doesn't like that person and what she did to her.
Yeah.
But instead you're like, oh, I accept you because I know nothing or nothing negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
also,
Oh, you're
but
welcome.
I say last thing, I find also a very powerful thought when I cultivate in myself the thought for every person around me that they are images of God. So whatever they do, if the first thing that hit my mind is that he's an image of God, he knows better, he will know better, he deserves to know better, so I don't judge. And by leaving the judge out of my heart, whatever comes out of my mouth then, it can work better. So it's all in our mind, I think, what the thoughts we cultivate for the others that can help us with this topic. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, we'll stop there. So through the prayers of our Holy Fathers and of Abba Dorotheus, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. All right, well, thank you all for coming. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Father.
Oh,
Thank you, Papa Ephraim.
one thing I just also want to announce is that in March, because of the schedule and Lent is coming, we'll start at 10:30. I'll tell you the more details 1 hour later than our regular time. But I'll post the details. I'll send you guys an email as well. Okay.
Thank you, Father.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Father.